They say love does not ask of wealth, nor does it bow to poverty. But what happens when the richest man in the city falls for the poorest woman on the street? This is the story of a man who had everything his heart desired: cars, houses, power, respect. Yet, in the middle of all his riches, his heart remained empty. And then came a woman with nothing but her dignity, sitting by the roadside where countless passers-by ignored her. She had no gold to offer, no crown on her head, no place she could call home. But what she carried inside was worth more than all the treasures he had locked away. How could a billionaire, surrounded by luxury and adored by society, risk it all for someone the world had already forgotten? What was it about her that touched a place in his soul that money could never reach? Stay with me, because this tale is not just about love, it is about choices, sacrifice, and the strange way fate brings two worlds together when no one expects it. His name was Chike. To the world, he was the perfect man, young, handsome, a billionaire whose face appeared in magazines and whose name opened doors. Wherever he went, people whispered with admiration. Men envied him, women dreamed of him, and business partners bowed at his presence. Yet, behind the tall gates of his mansion, Chike's life was quiet, almost hollow. He had wealth, yes, but he longed for something he could never buy. On the other side of the city was a woman called Amara. She lived each day by the roadside, her hand stretched out to strangers who rarely stopped. Some mocked her, some pitied her, most ignored her. But Amara was not like others thought. Though her clothes were torn and her stomach often empty, her spirit carried a strength that no hardship could break. She had learned to smile even when tears threatened, to share a kind word even when her own life felt unfair. Chike's world was polished marble and shining glass. Amara's world was dust, noise, and the uncertain hope of the next meal. Two lives so different that they should never have crossed. But fate does not ask for permission, it weaves its own path. And so, on one ordinary afternoon, while Chike's driver slowed at a crowded street corner, his eyes fell on the young woman by the roadside. At first, it was just a glance. But in that single moment, something stirred in him. A man who owned everything felt strangely drawn to someone who owned nothing. He did not know why, but he knew this was not the last time he would notice her. The next day, Chike found himself taking the same route again. His driver wondered why the sudden change in routine, but Chike gave no answer. He only leaned back in his seat, eyes scanning the roadside as though searching for something unseen. And there she was, Amara, seated on the bare ground, her hand stretched timidly as people rushed past her. For a moment, Chike simply watched. The city was loud, cars honking, traders calling out their prices, but his attention narrowed only to her. She looked tired, yet there was a calmness in her eyes, as though she carried a secret peace that the world could not steal. Chike reached for his wallet, pulled out some notes, and asked the driver to stop. Stepping out, he walked toward her. Many people on the street stopped to stare. They knew who he was, the billionaire who never walked anywhere without security. And now he was standing before a roadside beggar. Amara raised her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze. Chike stretched the money toward her. She looked at it, then looked back at him. To his surprise, she shook her head gently and whispered, "I only take what I need, sir. This is too much." For the first time in a long while, Chike was speechless. He had given gifts worth millions to people who never refused. Yet here was a woman with nothing, turning down his wealth with quiet dignity. He placed the money in her hand anyway, but she returned a portion and kept only the smallest note. Then she smiled, a smile so genuine it unsettled him. Chike walked back to his car, but something within him had shifted. He could not stop thinking about her words. Why would a woman with nothing refuse what others would fight to receive? What kind of strength lay hidden in her that she could choose dignity over desperation? For the first time, Chike felt that his riches were powerless before a simple beggar on the roadside. From that day, Chike could not stay away. Each time his business took him across the city, he insisted his driver pass through that same street. At first, he only watched from the car, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. But soon, he began to step out, speaking a little longer each time. Amara was cautious. She did not understand why a man of such wealth would care to speak with her. Many people had thrown coins at her feet, some with pity, others with disdain, but no one had ever asked her name. Yet here was Chike, not only asking her name but wanting to hear her story. Day by day, she shared pieces of her life. She told him how she lost her parents young, how life pushed her to the streets when there was no one else to turn to. But even as she spoke of hardship, there was no bitterness in her voice. Instead, she spoke of gratitude for small mercies: the stranger who once shared a meal, the kind woman who gave her a wrapper to cover herself on a cold night, the little children who smiled at her without judgment. Chike listened with growing admiration. He had dined in the finest restaurants, traveled to the grandest cities, and spoken to men of influence. Yet none of them had ever spoken with such honesty. Amara's words carried no pretense. She had nothing, yet she had a richness of spirit that humbled him. One afternoon, when he offered to buy her food from a nearby restaurant, she nodded but said, "Buy for me, yes, but also for the old man down the street. He has not eaten all day." Chike looked at her in silence. Even with so little, she thought first of others. The more he saw her, the more he felt a strange warmth filling the emptiness he had carried for years. It was not pity that drew him to her, it was respect, and something deeper he could not yet name. But as days turned into weeks, whispers began to rise. Passers-by noticed the billionaire who often stopped for the roadside beggar. Some laughed, some shook their heads, and others began to spread stories. And though Chike tried to ignore them, he knew it was only a matter of time before the world demanded answers he was not yet ready to give. The whispers soon turned into voices, and the voices became loud enough to reach the ears of those closest to Chike. At first, it was his friends who confronted him. They laughed, thinking it was a passing amusement. "Chike," they said, "you can have any woman you desire. Why waste your time with a beggar who owns nothing but torn clothes?" Chike only smiled, but inside he felt a quiet storm. For the first time, his choices were being mocked, not for his business, not for his wealth, but for his heart. Then came the family meetings. His uncles reminded him of the legacy he was meant to protect, the family name that must never be dragged into shame. His mother, with tears in her eyes, begged him to stop seeing Amara. "What will people say?" she asked. "A man of your standing marrying a woman from the streets?" Even his business partners began to worry. Rumors spread in boardrooms, and newspapers carried headlines questioning his judgment. They feared his association with Amara would tarnish his image, and with it, their fortunes. Amara too felt the weight of the world pressing on her. Strangers insulted her openly. Some women spat near her feet, telling her she was reaching too high. One evening, she turned to Chike and said softly, "You must leave me. Your world will never accept me. I do not want to be the reason you lose everything." But Chike shook his head. He looked into her eyes and said, "Amara, everything I own means nothing if I cannot share it with someone who sees me, not my money. For years, I have been surrounded by wealth, but I have never felt alive until I met you. If the world chooses to laugh, let them laugh. I would rather lose riches than lose you." His words were firm, but his path was not easy. The city watched, waiting to see if the billionaire's courage could stand against the pride of society. And as the days passed, the tension only grew stronger. Chike had made his choice, but the cost of that choice was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. The turning point came on a bright morning when the city gathered for a charity event hosted by Chike's company. It was the kind of gathering where cameras flashed, where powerful men shook hands, and where every detail was reported in the news. When Chike arrived, people expected him to appear with one of the elegant women society believed suited his status. Instead, he stepped onto the stage with Amara by his side. Gasps filled the hall, whispers moved through the crowd like fire, and every camera turned toward them. Chike did not flinch. Taking the microphone, he spoke clearly, "All my life, I have been measured by the wealth I carry, the clothes I wear, and the company I keep. But today, I want the world to see me as I truly am, not as a billionaire, but as a man who has found love. This is Amara. She may not have riches, but she has given me something I never found in mansions or boardrooms: peace, kindness, and truth." The crowd was stunned. Some shook their heads in disbelief, but others began to nod slowly, touched by his courage. Amara stood quietly beside him, her eyes lowered, her hands trembling, yet her presence spoke louder than any jewel could. From that day, their story spread even further. Some still mocked, but many began to admire. People who once ignored Amara started to see her differently. No longer just a beggar, she was the woman a billionaire had chosen, not for beauty or wealth, but for the strength of her heart. And as days turned into weeks, Chike and Amara walked their journey together, facing judgment, yes, but also inspiring hope. He introduced her into his world, not by changing who she was, but by honoring her dignity. Slowly, the lines between the roadside and the mansion began to blur. What once seemed impossible had become their reality. In the end, Chike and Amara's story became more than just a tale of love, it became a lesson. For wealth may buy respect, but it cannot buy sincerity. And poverty may strip away comfort, but it cannot take away dignity. There is an old saying, a person is not valued by the gold on their body, but by the truth in their heart. Chike discovered this truth when he looked beyond riches and found love where the world least expected it. Amara proved that even in rags, a pure heart shines brighter than diamonds. Their journey was not without pain, but it taught everyone watching that true love is not measured in cars or houses, but in kindness, patience, and sacrifice. And so, I ask you, if you were in Chike's place, would you have chosen as he did? Would you risk laughter, judgment, and wealth for love that sees beyond appearances? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join us again for more timeless tales that carry wisdom from our people to the world.